mountain bikes, zip lines, and cargo cults. That's probably a title you weren't expecting to see in the Cities Skylines video today, but they will all be making an appearance as we create this super diverse build. We have this mountainous section of our island that could easily be bypassed by just filling it in with trees, but we don't want to do that. So instead, I'm going to use some of your suggestions to create a high-octane adventure zone, complete with, amongst other activities, a functional mountain bike track. But we're not finished there. We have a recently discovered island on the map, one shielded from civilization for centuries and home to an indigenous tribe of people. But as you're going to find out, that community has had contact of sorts from afar, and the consequences of that contact will come as a real surprise. So I'm going to tell you their story based on real life events, and we'll give them some representation in the build today. So we're going to be kicking things off with a mountain bike track, and I think it was important to really just get at least the outline put in place and give me an idea of what I'm going to be building. I didn't really have a clear plan of exactly how I was going to go about doing it, but at least if I have an outline of the track, at least I know where things are going to go. I think sometimes it's important to just get something put on the map. It's really easy to spend probably too much time staring at the map and trying to formulate ideas in your head, when sometimes you just need to make a start on things. And it's funny because we were speaking about that on Discord the other day, and my advice was just start, just get something down. And then I don't follow my own advice, but at least if you have a baseline to work on, you can go in and amend it, you can delete it, you can redo it, just go back to a different save. Most importantly, you've started to build, right? I definitely plan on using StarQ's ploppable blocks. Perfect for this build. We've got a ton of ploppable buildings that don't have functionality, and some of them we've kind of repurposed, for our own use. Static ploppables, of course, are great. They give you a ton of flexibility, but of course they don't have the functionality. They're not driving traffic, they're not driving population or activity. So these service blocks can give some real life to what would otherwise be sort of dead areas in the island, and that's really the kind of challenge when you're using those ploppable buildings. So now, of course, we can plop away as our heart contents, and we just stick blocks in them to get it functional. A great benefit of that is that you can fit them in really small spaces. They're only one block wide, or one unit wide, right? So here you can see we can just kind of pick our spot carefully, and then we can just drag our building over, and there we go. We've got a functional building as long as it's connected to the road. So the main inspiration today came from Evans here on the comment section. Places like Fiji love their adventure trails and hiking trails with a challenge that requires. So mountain climbing, biking, kayaking, sailing, all that sort of stuff. And Evan, here we go. We're pretty much going to cover most of that in the episode today, man. Now, I thought that this was going to be the last episode of Bali High, and as usual, I vastly underestimated the amount of work that was going to be required. So I reckon we've got a couple more episodes, and if you guys have got any more ideas, now's the last chance, because we are very much running out of space on this map. Now, it is going to be super useful here because I do want people coming up here, and I want them to be using it. I would like a little bit of pedestrian access, or pedestrian action rather, and that should serve its purpose. We probably won't get a huge amount up here, it's only a small block, but at least we'll get a bit of life. For the down ramp, or the downhill section of our mountain bike track, I decided just to use the bus lane, the single line one. I reckon we can get it covered up pretty easily with some net lanes and some decals, and at the end of the day it's a fully functioning road. It's not going to give us the problems that we maybe have with invisible roads, and it should work pretty nicely. The plan here is to use the same technique as we have in the racetrack videos. You might have not seen them, but essentially what we do is we create bus lanes, and then we reskin the buses and we turn them into cars. So the idea here is to run the bus lane, and then we're going to reskin it and get some mountain bikes running. Now, I don't have the skills to do all of that myself. I did get some help, and we'll show you all of that a little bit later on in the video. But the first thing to do is to just set up the actual bus lane. We'll just run the buses with it first and just make sure that everything is running as expected. And there we go. That is looking like a win. Perfect. So initially, to tidy up the actual track itself, I'm going to use some of Elgendo's dirt roads. Perfect for this. They go directly over the road, and we can kind of use various net lanes and fill most of the gaps. Just want to try and hide the pink, and we want to try and hide that concrete. That's not going to look too good if you're trying to run a bike down it. I'm going to build out the bones of the adventure zone, and we're going to have a few different sort of aspects to this build here. Of course, we're going to need some buildings, and I think a signature building here is going to work pretty well. I think this is a lobster shack or something like that. I can't exactly remember what it's called, but a nice little asset. pretty compact, nice and small, and it's very much fitting in this Pacific Island build. I would like a smaller one just beside it. I think that can function as maybe like a ticket office or an admin centre, something like that, and it kind of gives a bit of a differentiation from where you might have that kind of restaurant and drinking zone perhaps beside it. So with the buildings in place, we can really get a feel for exactly how the zipline is going to work. Now, of course, this isn't going to be functional. I think the only way when I was thinking about it making it functional was maybe do an elevated pedestrian walkway, but of course the Sims would be walking up the zipline and not just down, and I didn't want that. And also you'd have the walking animation, and I don't think that would look very good. So I decided just to run the electricity cables, delete the one in the middle using the bulldozer, and then what we can do is we can just stick a poor sim and suspend them in mid-air, and that's pretty much the plan. I'm going to grab Crypto Gamer's Cube mod. Again, this is going to be super useful. It's funny because I talked about it in a previous episode, and I basically said that these will be super useful in big infrastructure builds, and they absolutely will. And then I've not actually used it for any big infrastructure build yet. I've used them in really kind of small builds. Not probably not the way I was intending to be using them. Now these things don't conform to the ground. You can sink them in and throughout, and you can really hide a lot of jank with them as well. So really useful, and it's going to be one of these little tools that you're just going to go back to time and time again. So we're going to pick this poor sod to hang in the air, and it looks a little bit precarious, doesn't it? It's a shame that they can't sway with the wires as well. That would have been pretty nice, but it's what it is. After that, it was just a case of finding a prop that looked at least reasonably half decent, and we can try and pretend that they are attached to that zip wire. Don't know if I'm necessarily particularly happy with it, but it's not terrible, and I can't really think of anything better to make it with. We'll use the same little cube trick down at the bottom. Again, I want to sink that wire down to a more reasonable level for people coming in and landing, so we'll need to give them a bit of a landing area, and again, the cube's going to do the trick for us here. Any additional jank, you can either use more cubes, or you can just use a bit of vegetation, whatever you think is going to fit in. So I've installed the Bikes Pack by Washi, and these are essentially custom assets. They are on PDX mods, and I'm going to just use them as props for the time being. So this mod is usually used for swapping out motorbikes for push bikes. You can use it in conjunction with the vehicle controller mod, and that will let you adjust the spawn rate of the vehicle type. So if you want bikes, kicking about the city roads, then this is how you go about it. So as I say, we're just popping down props for just now. This is not the functional part of the build. That'll be coming just a little bit later on in the video. So to keep things interesting, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a little bit of detail in here and use some of the road net lines again and a few decals, and we'll try and at least get a feel for how this little development is going to look when it's finished. I sometimes have a problem when I'm building that you kind of get stuck because I can't really envisage how things are going to look. So every now and again, switching focus onto a different task, it helps me anyway. So, if you're struggling in your builds, it's maybe something you want to try. Well, we had a little bit of eye candy to the build. Just wanted to say thank you to all those Patreon and YouTube members. Guys, it's super appreciated. I've recently added some early access to YouTube videos. So Patreon members get the early access already, but YouTube members can now get it directly through YouTube as well. In the next week or so, I should be kicking off some members only videos as well. The idea is over time to build a real library of reference materials that you guys can go in and use whenever you want to check out mods, or maybe you just need a little bit of inspiration for the build, but you don't want to watch a full, 40, 50, 60-minute video on YouTube to try and get a bit of info. So hopefully it should have a bit extra value for anybody who wants to support the channel. There are a few key differences between YouTube and Patreon membership. Pricing is exactly the same, but you get slightly different access. So all that stuff's explained in the channel description. Check it out if you're interested. Again, thanks very much guys if you choose to do so. It's really appreciated. We're just going to take a couple of minutes. We'll get things looking a little bit nicer, and I'll catch up with you in a second, and we'll get on to the next stage of the build. I have to say, once we spend a bit of time doing that vegetation, it definitely makes me feel a little bit better, and it gives me a little bit of a push to crack on with the rest of the build. Pretty happy with that. That poor sod hanging in there, that doesn't look too comfortable, does it? I think he appears to be impaled by by one of the poles as well, poor guy, and I don't think he's going to get much help up there either. He's going to be stuck there for the rest of the episode, so hopefully it's not too uncomfortable for him. I think we can tell already it's going to make a nice addition to this map, and it just extends the theme of what we've done already as we work our way around the island. But it's still got lots to do, lots and lots to do. I know from the very start that I wanted to create something of an adventure playground. There were two ways of approaching it. We could either go for a kind of nature look, lots of wood, lots of trees, timber climbing frames, that kind of thing, which I think would have looked like a pretty good fit. But again, I think it might have been just a little bit too samey for the rest of the stuff that we have on the island and even in the rest of this build. The alternative was to go for a really colourful, man-made, synthetic type build. And I think given any opportunity to get a bit of colour into this build, then I think that's probably the right call. This game can look super drab and super grey at times, and this build is the exact opposite of it. So I definitely want to lean in and get all that colour in as much as I can at any opportunity, quite frankly. So to create the outline, I'm using Piccana's F1 track mod by Gendo, absolute legend. We're going to repurpose some of those net lanes that we would have been using as the border to any racetracks. Because on net lanes you can get some really nice curves, which means that you can then fill them in using surfaces, and all the hard work is kind of done for you. So my crypto game was net lanes, again amazing pack. This one I'm going to use the painted yellow lines. They're nice and thick, again nice and colourful. They're going to give a contrast to some of those primary colours. But it also serves another purpose. It's going to give us a border that we can surface in, and the surface that I'm going to be using to surface that one in is going to be the vanilla ore surface. We've used that one plenty of times in the past, and it gives a nice texture really. It has a variety of uses. So we're going to be using that as the I don't know, what would you call it? Like sand pit or the soft area, I guess, when kids have it in a play park. I don't know what it's called, but it's going to look good anyway. It's nice. Again, it's a nice contrast to the bright colours I'll be using. So let's just quickly get these surfaces in place now. Now I have to say, with those colours now in place, there's something about it that kind of reminds me of the South African flag. It's got all the base colours there, doesn't it? Completely unintended, but I do like the look of it. It's super beautiful, super colourful rather, and I think if kids were here they would pretty much love that. So yeah, happy with that one. Want to add a little bit of benching, and we'll keep the adults happy, I guess, there as well. And we do have a nice variety of props and assets to choose from now. We have obviously the vanilla stuff that we've had from the start, but we've also got extra props from some of the more recent assets that have been added. And they do have a bit more variety in terms of the size and the shape of them, and yeah, we can get something looking nice and unique out of this now. So I certainly want to get things all boxed off, so we'll get them all fenced in. We don't want kids wandering off into the sea, and then we want to add some life as well. We'll use some of Sully's citizen props, some props, and we'll get a ton of kids added in here as well, and they can run riot. just to give you a quick recap of where we are, we've got the mountain bike course, at least the outline of it done. We've got our play park in place. We've also got our functional buildings that will act as our ticket office, admin centre and our restaurant. We've done the initial settling in phase, if you like, where we build out the environment, lots of decals, net lanes, plenty of vegetation, all that kind of good stuff. There are, of course, a few things that are still missing from the build, and that's going to be obviously the functional part of the mountain bike stuff, which we will get to very, very shortly. But also, I want to create a little bit of a scene and a little bit of a more sort of casual beach scene. We have obviously quite a few beaches throughout the build, everywhere really, and I want to create a kind of little bit of an informal roadside one as well, which I think should look pretty sweet. And of course, we've got our cargo cult that's going to have their own little tribal island, and we've still to get to that yet, of course, as well. So before we can get all that stuff wrapped up, I want to just continue getting the build settled into its environment. So I'm going to extend out the detailing, and we're going to get the built environment done. So we're going to get vegetation. We're going to add a little bit of volcanic rock down the water side as well. Going to kick things off with a good selection of boulders and rocks, so we get different sizes in there, and then we're going to add some rubble as well, and that just really acts to fill the gaps. A little bit of vegetation, some of the tiny oaks works quite well here, and that's really it. It takes a little bit of time to get it in, but it's pretty good. Now, one thing I did notice is that the brush strength, I can normally put that up to 300 through, I think, Tree Controller. I don't know why it's not giving me the option here, it's only going to be 100%, so it took me a bit longer to do it than expected, but it is what it is. I'm probably just missing a setting somewhere. Now, as I said earlier on, I want this to sort of feel like a volcanic rock formation almost, and to do that, usually volcanic rock that I'm aware of is usually quite a bit darker. So I'm going to go around and recolor all of these boulders, and that did take a long time. You can't use the area effect, the radius one doesn't work. So we just got to click these things individually, and yeah, my hand was a bit sore after this one, but I think it was worth it. To contrast the more organic feel of the kind of rainforest type deal, I'm going to add some more manicured spaced out palm trees down here. A bit of surface work to fill the gaps. It's just a little bit quicker than decals, and it works quite well when we've got different props on there as well. It kind of breaks up the repetitiveness of the surfaces sometimes. I'm going to use some prop vegetation so we can recolor it, and these nice red palm trees that were in episode 6, I think they're going to make an appearance, and again we're going to use them just the same along the roadside, and add a wee bit of contrast to all of the green that we have in our scene. The nice thing about this build is that it's always crying out for low density residential, so where we get a little plot of land that looks a little bit bare but it might be good for development, we can just chuck down a few houses. I'm keen to keep the feel of the housing very much the same throughout the island, so again, little cul-de-sacs, little driveways, kind of rough roads, plenty of vegetation surrounding it, and then we'll get them recolored. They should fit in the theme quite nicely. After building up the vegetation, I do want to add a bit more beach vibe around the edges, of the islands and up against the water. Yeah, I think it makes sense. Plenty of this right the way throughout the island, of course we have, and again it just kind of softens things up a little bit and does make it look a little bit natural. So rather than using surfaces, I quite like using the brush tool and the decals. I think that works quite well, and we don't need to spend too much time on it. As you can see, it kind of goes on pretty quickly, and it goes on pretty unevenly as well, which is an added bonus. There we go, that's pretty much the final vegetation in place, and it's looking pretty cool. So it's time to get things functional now. So what I did is I jumped in the editor and I was planning on just reskinning a bus and just putting a motorcycle perhaps in it instead. And at least that way we can get things running on the track. And from a distance, we have the illusion that we have at least a functional mountain bike track. However, I couldn't remember how to do it. So I had to ask Harbour Master J to come and help me. And yeah, it was an easy enough solution. I just have to remove all of the meshes before adding a new one on. It's all pretty simple in the end. Now, what you're looking at here is one of these motorbikes coming in. As you can see up the top, it's shown as a bus, no passengers, and at least you can get a nice view of the island as it comes in. But Jay, obviously being the expert on these things, can do a lot better. So here from a distance you can see we've got the motorbikes running down the track, and I think that might have been an okay solution at the end of the day. You know, as I say, from a distance it doesn't look too bad. But of course, Jay, being the expert that he is, can always take things a little bit further. What he managed to do was to take Wash's mountain bike, prop or asset, and essentially make it into a bus and add passengers on top of it as well. So here you're going to see the result of that work. We definitely have the mountain bike's prop running. They're running as scheduled, you know, on the actual course itself. But you will notice that they don't have anybody on it. Now that's not down to anything that Jay's done, that's down to the passengers just not getting on at the stop. So what I ended up having to do was to go and delete the only bus stop or bus route that I have in the island, replace it with this one, and what we'll be doing is we'll be forcing people, if they want to go from one main town to the other, they have to take the scenic route. They have to be routed through this particular mountain course. So after letting things run for a little while, you can see that we do in fact now have riders on the bikes. They're not on all of them, it's a little bit inconsistent, and it's just down to passengers not getting onto the, you know, in inverted commas, bus, you know, when it goes past the bus stop. But I'm pretty happy with that. I think it looks pretty cool. We managed to do it between us, and a huge thank you to Jay for coming up with these goods. I wasn't expecting that when I started this particular episode, and it's an absolute bonus to be able to show you guys how it's done. Really cool. We are of course getting into the final episodes of Bali High. I thought this one was going to be the last one, but obviously not. We probably have maybe 2 or 3 left. In fact, there will be a few surprises and a few new things that will be coming, and I'm quite excited to bring them to you. Jay has been busy, he's sent me some stuff over already, and I know he's busy working on a few other bits and pieces as well, so I'm super excited to get them out to you when I can. But obviously, make sure you're subscribed if you're not already, so you're not going to be missing the next episode. I'll give you guys a proper first-person view just at the end of the video in the cinematics as well. Now, it's not an episode of Bali High unless we have a beach scene, and this one's not going to be any different. So we're going to add plenty of life in this one. I want to try and get plenty of stuff in the water as well and make it look quite interesting. Obviously, we're going to be using Sully's citizen mods again, props. We'll get some of these guys thrown in here. We've got nice beach blankets by Jay, so these are custom, they aren't on PDX mods. We'll get them thrown in as well. I'm going to revert back to StarQ's ploppables again. You can see that it's spawning buildings there already. Nothing, just a little beach hut with some real basic amenities is what we're looking for here. Maybe they can be selling drinks or whatever you would expect to buy on the roadside. So this is the UK shed. It's going to need a door, so I think a garage door is fine. It'll do the job. We'll stick a little prop or two around the sides and make it look the part. Now, I was having a scroll through find it, and I was really looking for something I could use as a floating device, but I came across these things, the Jay's seahorses. I didn't know I had these. Jet skis. Perfect. So chuck a couple of them on. They do float as well, which is nice. I don't need to mess about with the elevation. And what I'll do is I'll chuck a few people on here as well. Now, they're not going to move with the movement of the flotation, but nonetheless, it's still going to look pretty good with them sitting there. Same idea with some surfboards by Jay. Again, we're going to just chuck them on. Again, they'll float. We can use them maybe as props on the water as well as props on the beach. I think getting a couple of assets, bigger assets, maybe a little bit further out to sea would be pretty nice. We've got that kind of sailing boat and the yacht there. So the suggestion by Evans that I showed you at the beginning of the video suggested kayaks. Now, I did spend probably too long looking on Find It to try and find something I could use as a kayak. I didn't really find anything that was really all that good. So what I decided to do is just string a few barrels together, put them in a bit of a kayak type shape. I guess you gotta use your imagination with this one, guys. Work with me, huh? And then what we'll do is we're just gonna recolor them. Once we've got them in place, I'm just gonna drag them over to the bay and pop a little citizen on it, and then at least we have something that resembles a floating device of some description, even if it's not necessarily a kayak. But best I could do, but it does add a little bit of colour to the scene. So now it's time for something a little bit different. We're going to head over to this remote island. So during World War II, American soldiers landed on remote Pacific islands, and they brought with them an incredible amount of things that the islanders had never seen before. Planes, radios, canned food, even Coca-Cola. And to the local communities, it looked like these magical supplies, what they call cargo, were gifts from the god, delivered by these strange, powerful outsiders who seemed to know the rituals to summon them. But when the war ended, the soldiers packed up and left, and the cargo stopped coming. The islanders were left with questions and a deep desire to bring it back. Therefore, some islanders began reenacting what they saw. On the island of Tana in Vanuatu, they cleared runways, waved signal flags, and even built full-size planes out of bamboo, believing that if they got the rituals right, the cargo would return. But these were symbols, not signals. The world had moved on, and the cargo, sadly for them, never came back. So what started as a misunderstanding turned into one of the most fascinating cultural phenomena of the 20th century, the cargo cult. I found the whole concept entirely intriguing, and it's definitely worth, once you're done having a look at this video, go and have a look at the stuff that's on YouTube. There's a couple of kind of condescending documentaries on there, but they're really interesting nonetheless, and definitely worth exploring if you want to go down that rabbit hole. So the inspiration from this build today was suggested by SoundLive with the addition of some tribal islands. Obviously, once you start googling things, you find little fun stories like this to build out. So again, another little reminder, if you have any other ideas, put them in, because we've probably only got a couple of episodes left. So in honor of those tribes, we're going to build our own little plane made of bales. I don't think we've got bamboo in the game yet, so we'll make do with what we have. Nothing fancy here, just a little bit fun and adding something a little bit unique to the city. So before we wrap up and have a look at the finished product, do have a little bit of housekeeping to do. I asked some time ago what we should be calling this bay, and then I completely forgot to rename the thing. So I went for Bulla Beach Club by Noah Bryan. I think that's pronunciation. Quite like that one. Pretty cool. Bulla is the Fijian word for hello or welcome, and also expresses wishes for good health and happiness. So, perfect fit. Absolutely going in there. We also had a request by Oh Yeah to name the island from the game Arma 3 Apex. So he's looking to get it called Tanoa. We can do that. This is going to be our tribal island, Tanoa. We also had a request by Tygon to actually name the main bay Calcio Bay. I'm going to reserve it for this one here to the north. Quite like that one, so we can have it right up beside the Bulla Beach Club. Lovely. Now I'm going to show you this scene at night time for no other reason other than it looks pretty cool, and I quite enjoyed watching all the ambulances come in and out. But it did remind me of one thing that I still had to do, and that was attempt to get our big hospital in the town functional. So again, we're using StarQ's service assets or service blocks here. I don't mind that one sitting out there, it's not too bad. Sadly, the ambulances didn't quite work, and I had to probably take it apart a bit and kind of redo it, and quite frankly, I couldn't be bothered. So I'm just going to run with that, and what I'm going to do though is I'm going to try and get some of the helicopters active here as well. So I've deleted the one that I had already, which was non-functional. I'm putting down the service upgrade from the service block, and I'm kind of hoping that that's going to work. I can see as part of that mod that there's a helicopter airspace. I'm assuming that's just to be placed beside or above or on the helicopter pad. I'm not really sure how it works, don't know what I'm doing here, but we'll chuck it all on, and hopefully it will be functional with a bit of luck. It doesn't seem to be doing anything just yet, so we'll keep an eye on that, and we'll see if we get some action on that in the next episode. And here we have one of our cyclists holding up all the traffic on the island. We need bus lanes, don't we? Now we still have plenty of opportunities to add these service blocks dotted around the island, and we've got plenty of plopped buildings. So here where we've got this kind of big hotel up against the wall will be perfect. Didn't quite work out for those ones by the beach because of course we don't have road access, and frankly I'm not going to be putting it in just now and having to redo the beach either. But plenty of little options, trying to inject a little bit of life, and we'll just stick some commercial blocks here and see what happens. I'll repeat the process here and there when we see the opportunity. So as I say, we can do it for commercial, we can do it for industry, we can do it for residential, whatever we want. So we'll just chuck them in, and fingers crossed we get a bit more action. I noticed as well the main road that leads round to our main build area today wasn't detailed, so simple one for this. Along the beach road, we're just going to add again those dirt roads again. They're perfect, and again, if I want to add a little bit more detail, if I've got the time, we can stick a few more details, just brush them down with the decals and whatnot. Time to relax now with a beautiful view over Calcio Bay. Now, I did promise you guys that we're going to have a first person run down the mountain track, so let's enjoy this. It's pretty satisfying getting that together, isn't it? I have to admit. Now, one thing I would like to do, I think at some point in the future, is to get a proper first-person tour of the island. I think that'd be pretty cool, and we can kind of run a big route and really just explore every little nook and cranny. So I reckon we'll get that done once we get the series wrapped up. I reckon we can fit quite a few more little builds like these dotted around the map, and although we don't have a lot of space, there is probably more space than what I had actually thought once I had a proper look at it. So we do have plenty more to go, really. And I must admit, I do enjoy these little builds. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do series-wise after we finish this one. I do have a few ideas, but I don't really have anything concrete set in stone. So if any of you guys have got any ideas as well, just let me know, give me a shout, and hopefully it can maybe spark a little bit of inspiration. I think we managed to get a nice mix of nature and modern builds in this one, and a little bit of fun at the end, getting that cargo tribe in there as well. It was a nice addition and something pretty random for a Cities Skylines 2 video. Now that we've seen how to blend small-scale builds into difficult surroundings, I can promise you that it's not the only approach you need to take. Instead, you can sculpt the terrain to work for you. Check out this video for more ideas on how to produce a spectacular build on steep and challenging land.